I've been doing these documentation projects for 5.25 years, and somehow Gulclight TDF-2 is the first Data West game I've got into. Despite the name, Data West is not a division of Data East. For a brief, explosive period of time in the late 80s, Data West made some fairly popular computer games. They were actually a side project for a company that made mapping software, and that was probably also their downfall. They made a few very pricey errors with their project selection, some of which I'll get to before this series is over. And it's pretty clear that Data West decided to just shut down the game division and focus on the part of the company that made money. Data West might still be around, and I say might because they announced that they were making games again in 2020, then they didn't release anything, and then in early 2025 they had their corporate headquarters torn down. Now, I'm not great at business, as you can see from the viewership numbers of this channel, but I'm pretty sure that getting your corporate headquarters torn down is not a sign that you're doing well. As you might expect, since the game's title has a number 2 on the end, Gulclight TDF2 is the sequel to one of Data West's computer games. A game titled TDF, Kaiju Daisenso Keshi no Genshiro Go-e Sakusen. And I'm just going to say right now that I'm grateful that they went with a shorter name for the sequel. That title could be translated as TDF, Giant Monster War, the Critical Reactor Defense Mission. It's a strategy game in which you control the TDF, the Terran Defense Force, and you fight against armies of giant monsters. That original game was only released on computers, and the sequel was only released on the PC Engine. Now, there's something very important that you need to know first. If you just jump into Gulclight TDF2, then you're going to see this screen a lot. I found Japanese players who just got crushed by Stage 1 over and over again until they finally gave up. It doesn't help that Gulclight TDF2 is a pretty obscure game, and online documentation about it is sparse. Now, I did manage to beat the first stage. It took me 5 tries, but I figured out the game's core mechanics, and then things kind of came together. Missions are played on a tactical map, and all movement is on a grid, not hexes. This is one of those I go, you go strategy games where you move all of the pieces on your side, then your opponent moves all the pieces on their side. And superficially, you appear to have only 3 options. You can move, you can attack a neighboring monster, or you can change up your weapon. Many of the vehicles offer a choice between missiles or beam weapons, and the difference is supposed to be that missiles are more accurate but do less damage, while beam weapons do more damage and are less accurate. In practice, I think the damage numbers were so swingy that it didn't really make a difference which one you used. So at least early on, I'd probably stick to the missile weapons. Just take the better chance to hit. Okay, so now you know how to play. Just form up a defensive line so that you can concentrate fire, and you died. One of the units is the leader, and if that one gets destroyed, then it's an immediate game over. But everyone else can get blown up with monsters and you'll just keep going. Okay, so now you protect the leader a little bit more, and you might actually take down 1 or 2 monsters, and then you still die. What are you missing? Well, there are 2 key game mechanics that the game absolutely requires that you both use and abuse in order to complete missions. The first is unit stacking. You can put 2 units on top of each other, but only 2 and no more than 2. If there's 2 units on top of each other, then another unit can't move through that square. In this configuration, when you choose to attack, the top unit will shoot first, then the monster retaliates, and then the bottom unit attacks. This counts as the attack for both units, so you don't get double attacks this way. It's just a way to make your attacks more effective. Also, from stage 4 on, you can combine units together to make a giant robot of your own, and once they combine, they act as one unit anyways. Even though your vehicles are stacked, they both move independently, and you can switch who is the top of the stack and who you're controlling by picking unit in their menu. If you move somebody and want them to wait to attack for their buddy to show up, then pick standby. they'll still have their follow-up attack when you move the other person over. Okay, now you're getting a bit more firepower, but it's still not enough to let you complete that first stage. And that's where you need the other trick. Your units heal a bit at the start of each turn. So if somebody has taken a lot of damage from a giant monster, they can retreat and come back a few turns later at full health. And in many cases, you can outpace the giant monsters. Just run away from them every turn. Now that's enough to get you through the first stage, but there's another aspect to that which you'll need for the next few. When you have units stacked, monsters only attack the unit on top of the stack. So if someone gets hurt, you can flip them to the bottom and they'll be healing up, but still attacking. And unless you're taking a ton of damage, which is very possible given how swingy the damage numbers are, you can just keep rotating who's on top and fighting indefinitely. Your units come in 3 varieties: air, ground, and marine. And obviously, air can join forces with the other 2, but watercraft aren't going to be able to stack with the ground units. There are terrain effects that can give you more defense and slow your movement, and these seem to only affect ground units. Aircraft are flying above them, and boats are just on the water. The goal on every mission is to wipe out all of the enemy forces, and the quantity of these rapidly escalate. Once I understood how the game played, I could clear a mission pretty quickly. I stopped on the 3rd stage because I ran out of time for recording, but based on how it was going, I suspect I would have finished it up in another 10 minutes. There are 13 stages overall in the game, and as you'd expect, they just keep getting bigger as they go. Japanese players don't seem to be especially fond of Gulclight TDF-2. I saw plenty of people calling it unreasonable, unfair, and unpleasant. But the one thing that everyone agrees on with Gulclight is that it has a great soundtrack. Even I have to go along with that. I was kind of disappointed that I hadn't heard it before I picked a theme song for PC Engine Power, because the music here really could have worked for that. Now personally, I think Gulclight is okay. I wouldn't call it one of the best strategy games on the PC Engine. Your strategic options are just a bit too limited for that. And once you know what the game expects of you, then you can zoom through the first few missions. But when I had to stop recording, I was having a good time. I wanted to play for at least a little bit longer and see what was to come. So it's not something I'd call a must-play, but managing your small forces against giant monsters does give the game a bit of a hook, even if there isn't much to Gulclight past that.